Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. As a single parent raising a child with disabilities, life can be challenging at times. But my daughter Emily has always been a shining light in my life. At 10 years old, she was wise beyond her years. Sure, she had some physical limitations that meant she needed a wheelchair to get around, but her mind was as sharp as a whip. Emily never let her disability define her or dampen her spirit. We lived in a modest little house in a quiet suburb. The neighbors kept to themselves for the most part, except for the family that lived across from us, the Johnsons. Even from a distance, I could tell they were an entitled bunch. Fancy cars in the driveway, expensive clothes, and an air of superiority. The parents walked around with their noses in the air while their children ran wild. One Saturday morning, I took Emily to the park. She loved being outdoors, zipping around the paths in her wheelchair. The fresh air put a smile on both our faces. We were having a great time until those Johnson kids showed up. There were three of them. Two boys around 13 years old and a girl who looked about 8. They started taunting Emily right away, calling her a crip and other awful names. I immediately told them to stop and took Emily's hand to comfort her. She was used to the staring and whispers from other kids, but this direct bullying was new. My heart broke seeing tears well up in her eyes. Just then, the older Johnson boy shoved Emily's wheelchair, tipping it dangerously to one side. She cried out in fear. I spun around and scolded the boy, making it clear his behavior was unacceptable. He just laughed smugly, and his siblings joined in. They started circling around Emily like a pack of hyenas. The youngest one suddenly lunged forward and tried grabbing Emily's wheelchair. I pushed her back and yelled at them to leave us alone. The older brother got right in my face and said, "We'll do whatever we want, lady. We own this park." Then he forcibly ripped Emily from her wheelchair and pushed it away from us. The poor girl fell to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. My blood boiled seeing my daughter treated so cruelly. As the boys rolled her wheelchair further down the path, laughing boisterously, I ran after them, demanding they bring it back. The girl stayed behind, hovering over Emily menacingly. When I tried getting closer to my daughter, the little brat pushed me backwards. Just then, the Johnson parents leisurely strolled into view. I cried out to them for help, explaining what their horrid kids had done, but they just glanced dismissively in our direction. She should be thankful our boys wanted to play with her. Most children avoid cripples, the mom said snidely. I was seeing red. Unable to contain my fury, I slapped the smug grin off that woman's face. The next thing I knew, the dad's meaty fist collided with my jaw, knocking me to the ground next to my weeping child. As Emily and I lay there battered and bruised, we heard the family laughing as they all walked away, her wheelchair rolling along with them. I wanted to run after them, make them pay for what they did, but my priority was getting Emily home safely. I scooped her up in my arms, my own body aching from the blows I had taken. Emily clung to me, shaking uncontrollably. Back home, I reported the incident to the police immediately. Emily had difficulty describing what happened through her distraught sobs. When the officer saw the bruises on both of us, he knew we were telling the truth. He informed me they would arrest the Johnsons for assault and robbery. Word spread quickly about what had happened at the park. Our friends and neighbors were outraged. They showed up at our door with casseroles, cards, and well wishes for Emily. Having the support of the community buoyed our spirits. I reiterated to the police that I wanted to press charges. That delinquent family needed to face consequences. At the courthouse, the Johnsons spun some ridiculous tale pinning all the blame on us. They said we provoked their darling angels and assaulted them unprovoked. The parents fake cried, playing the victim, while the kids put on their best innocent faces. When Emily took the stand, she recounted the traumatic events of that day in calm, eloquent detail belying her age. The judge was extremely moved by her testimony, and despite the Johnsons' pathetic act, the case was open and shut. Security footage from the park confirmed exactly what happened. The judge berated the Johnson parents for raising such monstrous bullies. He sentenced them both to anger management classes and community service. The two boys were given juvenile probation and also assigned volunteer work. The youngest one was too young to be charged, but the judge said Child Protective Services would be monitoring that family closely from now on. Justice was served that day, but more importantly, Emily got her wheelchair back undamaged. She was shaken up by the incident initially, but bounced back with her usual plucky attitude. She knew the actions of those vile people didn't define her worth. I was so proud of my girl. Emily and I were both glad we stood up to that entitled family. And the community support we received after the fact was incredible. It went to show how many caring people there still are in the world. Emily never had to encounter those bullies again either. The Johnsons moved away not long after, likely embarrassed by their exposed cruelty. This experience only made my bond with Emily stronger. I would do anything to protect my child and make sure no one ever tries harming her again. Her disability requires extra care, but also gives her a resilience and wisdom that I admire to no end. She is the light of my life, and I know she's destined for great things. No bully can ever extinguish that bright spirit. Justice was served, and in the end, love prevailed. The next one is a pro-revenge story. My neighborhood does not have a homeowners association, at least not anymore. When my parents first moved in, my older sibling, maybe 2 years old and with me as a little glowworm, there was an homeowners association. They took money from the neighborhood in exchange for their services. At first, and for quite a while, my parents just kind of shrugged it off. The homeowners association shoveled the snow off the streets in winter and dealt with trash collection, so they were doing something worthwhile, right? Ha. No. The city controlled the snowplows and garbage trucks, not the homeowners association. But still, there was the illusion of effort. And besides, one summer they decided to contact a company to plant new trees all over the neighborhood. The fact that the company was owned by the son of the head of the homeowners association was totally coincidental. The trees were the beginning of the end for the homeowners association. Why? Well, my grandma on my dad's side was visiting when they came around to plant the trees. My grandma, who is a certified master gardener, and so she stared through the windows of our house as the guys planting the trees just dropped the saplings on the grass. Still with their roots inside the bag, they came in. No holes dug, no holes cut, just a bagged sapling lying on the grass like a pathetic and sad stick. The saplings laid there all night. No one came back to actually do their job and plant them. My master gardener grandma mentioned offhand that those saplings were going to die unless they got in the soil. And something clicked in my mom's head. She was paying the homeowners association money, actual money, every month, while both she and my dad worked, taking care of 2 very little kids, sending us to daycare and preschool, and arranging babysitters and feeding us. And the homeowners association was just going to pull this half-assed bullcrap instead of do what she's paying them for? No ducking way. So she showed up to the head of the homeowners association's house and basically demanded that the trees get planted properly like she's apparently paying for them to. The head of the homeowners association, so excited for someone actually caring about the neighborhood, made their second mistake. They asked if Mom wanted to join the homeowners association. She agreed. The trees were planted, but most didn't make it. My grandma was right. First things first, my mom showed up to the next homeowners association meeting. There were like 5 people there. No wonder they asked Mom to join. They desperately needed the people. So Mom looked at this collection of white people, herself included, who weren't even paying money to the homeowners association like the rest of the neighborhood. All the contractors the homeowners association called in were close relatives of other homeowners association members and weren't paid by the homeowners association. After all, their family. So my mom started digging. She spent pretty much a full summer taking down the homeowners association before she had to go back to teaching in the fall. With me carted along after her and my sibling old enough to be in school or daycare, she dug through the years of paperwork detailing the homeowners association's financial situation, and she found something extremely enlightening. The homeowners association didn't actually do anything. Well, they didn't do anything to benefit the community. Everything they claimed to do was either covered by the individual homeowner or by the city itself. So they were collecting money from all the neighborhood residents under false pretenses, and actually they weren't even supposed to be in our neighborhood. Their association's zone was a whole different neighborhood. So what is a working mother of 2 small children to do while her husband is off at work and she's off for the summer? She goes door to door with pamphlets. Me and my sibling in a stroller as she weaves her way through the neighborhood blocks. Pamphlets explaining the situation and how to stop paying for services you'll never get. Pamphlets that are, of course, written in both English and Spanish, to account for the high amount of Latino and Hispanic people in our neighborhood. and naturally she got a lawyer and an accountant. It put a major dent in her pocket, but if it meant the entire neighborhood wasn't exploited for money each month, it was worth every penny. Another homeowners association member helped her sift through the documents and data and pass out pamphlets and encourage people to show up to the meetings, but had to back out because of work-related reasons. My mom rolled up to the courthouse flanked by the lawyer and accountant, her kids safe at home with her husband, and had more than enough evidence to get the homeowners association the duck out of her neighborhood, expose the fraudsters for the frauds they were, and make sure that no homeowners association would ever push their luck in our neighborhood. It's been almost 19 years, and no one's even tried making another homeowners association in our neighborhood. The next one is a petty revenge story. My dad was an a-hole, a lovable a-hole, a compassionate, intelligent, caring a-hole, but piss him off and he became the pettiest a-hole you would ever meet. I have so many stories about his pettiness, but this one is one of my favorites. And before anyone asks, I loved my dad fiercely and miss him every day. He passed way too soon. One important thing to know about my dad is that if having the most noxious fart were an Olympic sport, he would have had multiple gold medals. Long car rides with him could be dangerous, and you knew that if Dad was in the toilet before you got there, you waited until anything he left dissipated, especially if he just had a nice rich meal. Dad and I both loved diners, and when we traveled, we would always ask where the good local diners were. On one of our college trips, we arrived at our hotel a little early, and our room wasn't ready. The hotel clerk was very apologetic. Some of their housekeeping staff had called in sick and they were running behind. Since we hadn't had lunch yet, it was around 2:30-ish. We asked the clerk for their diner recs, and they suggested a place not far from the hotel. Off we go to lunch. Y'all, it's been over 30 years, but I still remember how good that food was. And our waitress, Sandy. Why do I remember her name? Because the couple at the table near us kept yelling it over and over and over again. There were maybe 10 people in the restaurant total, and Sandy was taking care of most of them. She was on the younger side, but knew her stuff. I always like to ask what the staff likes when I'm making my decisions, and she told me what she liked, what they were known for, and what the day grill cook excelled at. As Dad and I were thoroughly enjoying our food, we watched this couple treat Sandy like she was stupid. They sent their food back multiple times and said nasty things about Sandy so loud that we had no trouble overhearing them. Every time Sandy came to drop something off or check on us, she just looked more and more upset. Since we weren't in a hurry, and the restaurant wasn't busy, we lingered over our meal, ordered dessert, and were still there when the mean couple paid their check, you paid at the cash register, and told Sandy, quite loudly, that since her service was so bad, all they were leaving her was $1 tip, and they thought that was being generous. They left, and when Sandy came to give us our check, she looked like she had been crying. Dad went to pay the check and gave her a very generous tip. When we got in the car, he was pissed, and I got to hear a lecture about how if he ever found out I treated a server like those people had, he would whoop my ass, no matter how old I was. We get back to the hotel, and had just checked in when another couple walked into the lobby. They headed towards the elevator that we were heading towards, and Dad and I both realized that it was the nasty couple from the restaurant who had been so mean to Sandy. We got on the elevator with them. They were staying on a floor above ours. Just as the door opened on our floor and I was walking out, my dad paused, let out a large, noxious fart, and said, "That's for Sandy," and then walked off, smiling as the elevator door closed, hotboxing the nasty couple in with his equally nasty fart. I laughed so hard I cried. I do feel bad for anyone else who had to ride that elevator after that. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I work in an airport restaurant. You can imagine we get a lot of stuck-up and idiot people who don't see us as humans. We work our asses off to provide the best service we can under the circumstances, working in an airport setting with unpredictable passenger numbers. For context, our restaurant is split into 2 separate cafes. Mine is the one before TSA. The one relevant to this story happened past TSA, meaning this was a passenger that either went through TSA or came off a plane from the departure lounge. The kitchen staff hand-prepared trays of vegetables with a portion of hummus. One of those vegetables is sliced cucumbers. Today, my assistant manager, who runs the kitchen past security, came up to me and told me I needed to check the trays I had for sale because they found mold on the cucumbers in their trays even when they hadn't reached to expiration we have for prepared fresh foods, such as the tray in question. I subsequently pulled my trays because they did, in fact, have mold on them. Enter Act 2 of this story. He came to me about 30 minutes later to tell me this part. Back in post-security, past TSA, a lady had bought a vegetable tray. Being the good assistant manager he is, he went over to make sure that it was a fresh tray. She didn't let him even get more than one word out before telling him, "Go away, leave me alone." Now he isn't a mean person at all. In fact, he makes the most conversation with all the customers, more than the rest of our staff, including me. He took one look at the tray she purchased. It was moldy. He made a couple more attempts to try and tell her that her food had mold on it so she could get a fresh one, to no avail. He's now at a loss and just lets whatever happens, happen. She ate the whole damn thing, cucumbers and all, with zero complaints. Just goes to show, when an employee comes up to you, hear out the employee just in case they have something important to tell you. Such as, "Ma'am, you are about to consume mold. How about you go choose another tray free of charge?" The next one is an entitled people story. My housemate and I are in our 20s and live in a unit block with a remote-controlled gate and allocated parking spaces. It's pretty common for residents and tradespeople to park in the shared driveway inside or outside the gate for short periods of time while loading, unloading large items, since there's very rarely available street parking nearby, and everyone is usually pretty chill about it. My housemate and I are moving and figured a way to get both of our cars into the car park to load with boxes and furniture so we don't have to be constantly shuffling cars. Our car spot is the one at the farthest end of the car park, next to the building. My car was parked there and my housemate was parked behind me, which doesn't block the driveway or any other parking spot, only the one that belongs to me. We've spoken to the owners of the two closest parking spots about it, and they said it's totally fine because we only do it for short periods of time, and anyway, it doesn't block them getting in or out of their spots. This morning, while we were inside getting boxes, our elderly neighbor from 3 spots down took offense to the fact that my housemate's car wasn't in an allocated bay. So he decided to park across 2 other units' parking spaces to block us in. We came outside, finished packing, and tried to get out around his car, but there wasn't enough room, so we found out whose car it was and my housemate went to knock on the door. First, he refused to open his door to speak to her, so my housemate, who is deaf, came to get me because she couldn't hear what he was saying with the door between them, but she could hear that he was yelling and she wasn't comfortable. I went to talk to him and he also yelled at me through the door and wouldn't open it to speak to me until I specifically asked if he could so we could work it out face to face. Then he initially refused to move his car and kept saying he was going to call the police and have us fined, despite the fact that he was also parked illegally. I pointed that out and he told me it was different for him because he's an owner. His granddaughter had to come out and convince him to just move his car into his unobstructed car spot so my housemate could leave. He finally came outside and started pointing at the no visitor parking signs. I apologized and told him that we do live there, and we're moving out. Hence why we needed to have both cars there, to pack. He refused to believe me. I have met this man several times and introduced myself by name and unit number, and I say hello every time I see him around, but I guess he didn't remember my face because he was convinced we were guests and demanding to know who we were visiting and how we got through the gate. I said we used our gate remote. He kept talking over me and asking where we'd gotten a gate remote and who had given to us. I said, "The real estate, because we live here," and asked if he would like to come to our unit and see all the moving boxes inside to prove that we were who we said we were, and he just walked off. He finally got in his car and moved it into his parking spot, and my housemate left in her car, and I waited for him to finish very, very slowly parking so I could apologize again and thank him for working it out. While I was waiting, his daughter and granddaughter came outside and apologized to me for his behavior, and I explained why we're parked like that, and she was really nice and understanding. When he finally finished parking, I went up to him, said thank you and sorry. It won't happen again. He blew straight past me and didn't acknowledge that I was standing there speaking to him at all. It really felt like the way a little kid storms off after losing an argument, and I was pretty shocked to have a fully grown adult behave so rudely when I was being polite and thanking him, even though he was the only problem in the situation. The kicker is, my housemate's car was nowhere near his parking spot and not obstructing anything, it just wasn't in an allocated bay. His car, however, was blocking the driveway, 2 of the neighbor's car parking spots, and at least 4 cars. But since he's an owner and we're just lowly renters, he fully believed we were the ones in the wrong. The next one is an entitled parent story. I, 17F, and my mother, 50F, who lives in Oregon, had a falling out this December, and recently she came to visit me and my dad in Texas. I was very worried about this because of her and I having the fight. But she seemed to regret what she did and was trying to be careful around me for the first day she visited, which I appreciated. The second day, she asked to borrow some leggings or shorts for me to go play tennis. I initially said no, as I buy all my clothes myself, and am pretty protective over my leggings in particular, which are pretty expensive and I don't like getting dirty, sweaty. However, she begged, so I gave her a pair of shorts to use. She said they were too short and she needed leggings because of the cold outside, so I found a pair that I would maybe be okay with her using as long as she took good care of them. She tried them on and told me that they were too short as well, and that she needed leggings that go all the way to the ankle instead of to the mid-calf. I argued with her, saying that I wasn't willing to let her borrow the ones I own like that, but she started yelling at me and my dad did as well to back her up, saying that I'm selfish and need to hand them over. I told her no, that I had given her plenty of options and that she could choose from those and that it wasn't my fault she hadn't packed any with her. She and my dad then said that I should have let her look through my closet and pick out whatever she wanted, and that everyone, like my future roommates and friends, are going to hate me because I was too selfish. I just walked away to my room to cool off. There I found a pair of fleece-lined leggings, which she initially accepted, but she heard the tone of my voice, which wasn't all sunshine and rainbows due to her being so rude to me right before. She said that I was being too rude to her and she didn't need the leggings anyway, because she could just wear the pair she had worn on the plane the day before. I was insulted by this because if she had a pair, why ask me for one? We were both pretty upset, and she calmed downish and said she wanted to talk to me about how selfish I was being. I told her it's not the right time, as I had to get to work, and went to go, to which she said FKU to me, her own daughter, who she was trying to make it up to. My dad refused to drive me to my work, so I went to bike over. As I was leaving, my mom decided to put in one last jab and told me to take off the shirt I was wearing, which she had given to me because it didn't suit her. She grabbed a pair of scissors and said she was going to cut it up, to which I laughed and took off the shirt. My dad realized how crazy she was acting and tried to calm her down. She asked why I was laughing and I said, "And you think you've changed? That's a joke." Anyway, I changed my shirt and was halfway out the door when she was yelling at me more. Then I left for work. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.